But yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining the Making Marks Creative Exchange discussion. My name is Becky and I'm the Events and Communications Officer at the Arab British Centre. For anyone that is unfamiliar with the work of the Centre, we're a charity based in London that promotes understanding of the Arab world in the UK. And we do that in a number of ways, but predominantly through arts and cultural projects, such as Making Marks, and we have a film festival, and we also have a building in central London that has lots of different courses and things going on. Usually, obviously, it's closed at the moment, but do check out our website for all the different things that we have going on. So I'm just going to quickly introduce the Making Marks project. So in 2019, we, with the British Council, devised the Making Marks Kuwait project, which is a creative exchange program between artists aged 18 to 30 in the UK and in Kuwait. So we took artists from the 4 UK regions on a roughly 5-day trip, I think it was, exploring galleries, museums, cultural sites, the landscape, all led by Medina, which is a fabulous organisation in Kuwait, led by Dima Al-Ghanem. And then they were commissioned to make work in response to their kind of experiences. And likewise in August with the Kuwaiti artists who travelled to Northern Ireland, Northern Ireland, Yorkshire and North Wales, and then also were commissioned to make work not so much about what they kind of saw, but about their experiences of the visit and the themes of the project, which is about international collaboration and kind of the impact of travel and international working on emerging artists. Unfortunately, the final part of the project was actually postponed because of the global lockdown. So we were supposed to be having a group exhibition in Kuwait in March. Unfortunately, that just didn't happen, but we're hoping to exhibit the work later in the year. But fantastically, the British Council was so flexible and allowed us to pivot the funding into a digital programme, which is where this kind of comes in. So thank you to the British Council for being so flexible and allowing us to still be able to showcase the fantastic work that the artists have been working on. Yeah, I'd like to hand over to Heba El-Zain, who we've been working really closely with on this project. She is the head of partnerships and programs at British Council Kuwait. She'd just like to say a few words. Heba.
Thank you, Becky. And good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. Thank you for joining us for this exhibition, for this exciting webinar. First, I would like to, of course, thank the Arab British Centre team as our partner for organizing this session. I would like also to welcome Ambassador Michael Davenport, the British Ambassador to Kuwait, in our session. Second, I would like to extend our warmest welcome to the 8 artists participating in this webinar from Kuwait and the UK. In what seems like yesterday, we started this wonderful program last year with our British Centre. The main objective was to showcase the positive impact of international exchange and how this shapes our society. The program actively challenged the stereotypes of our respective cultures and highlighted similarities, differences, and universal challenges facing emerging creative sector in both countries. Artists developed their work inspired by the visit to both countries and their connection with Kuwaiti and UK-based artists. As Becky mentioned, we were planning to showcase their commission and work in a group exchange here in Kuwait. However, due to the outbreak of the COVID-19, we decided to transform it into a digital event. So tonight, the artists will explore the new work they have created in response to their experience with the program. And again, thank you all for joining. Looking forward for it. And let's start.
Amazing, thank you, Heba. So yeah, just to kind of run through the format, I was going to do a bit of housekeeping, but I feel like everyone's used Zoom so much now that everyone actually knows how to use it and to keep their microphones on mute and things like that. So that's a relief. Over the last few months, we've had lots of dinner plates tinkling and people sneezing and stuff. So, but yeah, if you could keep your microphones on mute, that would be great. I'm going to ask the artists some questions about their work and about their experiences at the beginning of the talk, and then we'll open up to a kind of broader discussion where we'd love for everyone else to get involved. If you have any questions about the work that come up immediately when you see it or when you hear one of the artists talking, please fire it into the chat. Then we have it there ready for the question session, and so it doesn't pop out of your head again by the time there. So yeah, please do just send questions as and when, and we'll come back to them in the kind of wider group discussion. So, and as we have quite a lot of artists with us today, I'm gonna, rather than introducing everyone now, I'm gonna introduce them as we go. And yeah, hopefully you have a great discussion, and thanks for being here. So I thought I would start with Sian, Rees, Astley. So Sian is a conceptual artist based in North Wales, who mainly works with conventional or everyday materials and objects. She graduated in 2015 from a BA Fine Art course, and she's gone on to exhibit her work nationally and internationally, most notably as part of the Bloomberg New Contemporaries. She was nominated by the Mostyn Gallery in North Wales, and that is where she disseminated her work for the project. So Sian, as you're the first person that we're going to speak to, I just wanted to ask you, what were you thinking when you received the call from Nadia inviting you on a trip to Kuwait? Because I imagine it was probably a bit of a surprise.
Oh God, yeah, it was definitely a surprise. I was actually really shocked, but also excited as well. I honestly don't think I'd heard of Kuwait. I know that sounds bad, but I didn't really know what to expect or anything. So I was really excited to kind of get stuck into a project and just see how it went.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you about like your prior kind of knowledge of the art scene in the region, because I know you've exhibited internationally before, but that's really amazing that this was an opportunity to explore a place that you hadn't ever really considered going to, and yet you were able to have a very in-depth introduction to its arts and culture.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a difference between kind of sending your work off to be exhibited in, you know, the other side of the world, and going on this project or being part of this project where you've got 5 days fully immersed in the culture, in the art scene, and you know, you've got that time to experience everything, and really an opportunity to learn about the culture and you know, their inspirations as Kuwaitis as well. Even their history. I wanted to just kind of get my head around everything, understand everything, and kind of just fill up all the knowledge that I could get from my time being there. And you guys did an amazing job facilitating so much stuff in that 5 days. It was almost overwhelming, but once we got back from the trip, I had time to kind of process everything, and it was really inspiring, the trip. And also it was like holding a mirror up to myself as well, by kind of investigating and kind of trying to find out about Kuwaiti culture and their inspirations and history. It kind of made me focus on, well, what's my history? What's my background? You know, what are really my inspirations from the landscape to kind of everything, every day that I might have taken for granted.
Yeah, that's amazing. So from the kind of the initial 5 days, how did you find the process of those kind of inspirations like percolating through, and how did you begin to come up with the work that you came up with, which is called Folds in Time?
Yeah, so I think what stood out to me the most was when we visited Sadhu House, which was Al-Sadhu's, like the weaving processes and techniques that are specific to Kuwaiti culture and Bedouin culture. And I think what drew me to that was because of the knowledge I have of the Welsh woolen industries, and I have a fascination over the patterns and the symbols used in that weaving technique. So I was really interested in finding out more about the Al-Sadhu weaving techniques. And I was even more fascinated when I found out that it was on the UNESCO heritage list of being in danger of being lost, and because well, advancing technologies and the fact that people just don't use it anymore, and also the fact that it wasn't documented, it was orally passed down through generations, the meanings of the symbols and different complicated techniques. So I think that was my starting point. I was kind of on a mission to kind of solve the mysteries of what the symbols could possibly mean, and I kind of let my imagination get away with myself, fantasizing about what the symbols could mean. But it led me down an interesting path. I did a lot of research then when I got home, and read some interesting papers and essays written by people trying to document the different symbols and their inspirations. So that was really the starting point of my project.
And then how did you progress? So I'm going to show a picture of the work now, if you wouldn't mind kind of getting into just explaining it would be amazing. Oh wait, this is not the work, this is Sheikha's work. Sorry about this. I was testing it earlier and I forgot to put it back to the beginning. Cool. Oh, what? Sorry about this, guys.
You must have had a shock, Sian, because just for everybody's knowledge, so Sian was nominated by Mossin Gallery, but she didn't know she'd been nominated. So I had to find her on the internet and contact her and say, hi, you've been nominated to come to Kuwait. So I always thought you dealt with that really well, because you were the only one who had zero knowledge or background of what we were doing.
A part of me did think, is this a scam? What's going on? But no, I'm glad I went with it. Yeah, so this is my sculpture here. As Becky said, it's called Folds in Time. It's made from clay, and the clay sort of resembles the fluidity of fabric, and I've inscribed onto the clay different symbols inspired by the Al-Sadhu symbols. I use clay because of its tradition of being used as housing materials, and the fact that the Al-Sadhu weavings were used also as a housing material for the Bedouins in Bedouin tribes. I then gilded the clay piece with copper, and I oxidized it with salt to kind of create this kind of verdigris effect, as if it was old or kind of dug up. And the idea was that kind of to juxtapose if whether it was old or that the material itself was kind of unknown. The reason I wanted to gild it with copper was to kind of raise its merit and importance in a way that we saw in the museum when we went to Kuwait. The overriding sense when I was making this piece was of longing or nostalgia, or in Wales we have a word for it called hiraeth. There isn't an English translation for this word, but there might be one in Arabic, I'm not sure. But basically what it means is that you're longing for a time that you were maybe never present in, or a home that doesn't exist anymore. So this piece is all about kind of encapsulating this time, this craft, this kind of longing for a craft or time. Or I got this feeling when I was in Kuwait that you had kind of two different types of people. Maybe the older people were kind of harking back with this nostalgic feeling of the past, and then the more younger generation with kind of this burning question of identity: who am I? What is my history, sort of thing. And you know, with the rapid changes that's happened in Kuwait over the last 50-70 years, is all sort of exploring that and what it means, what identity means in home, and this feeling of hiraeth, I guess, for maybe a time that Kuwaitis these days can't relate to, because of the rapid changes and the amount of changes. But that's my you know, how I perceived what I experienced while in Kuwait. You know, you could tell me different. I'm not, you know, an expert, but that's kind of how I viewed it. But also while doing the work, it was, like I said, holding a mirror up to myself and my feeling of hiraeth to kind of my ancestors that I never actually met. And you know, it's a process that has begun, that I am interested now in looking in my past, and yeah, it's going to be an ongoing thing for me, I think, this kind of search.
Oh wow. Yeah, amazing. And I think that we're going to come back to a lot of those kinds of like aspects of personal discovery through exchange, and the fact that it does really kind of seek to reflect upon oneself rather than necessarily on the other place as well. And yeah, the sculpture is absolutely beautiful. I haven't seen it in real life yet, and I absolutely can't wait. And so you also, just quickly before we move on to the next person, you also led some workshops at the Moston Gallery, teaching people how to gild. How was that?
That was a really rewarding process. I'd never actually held a workshop for adults before, only for young children. So I was quite apprehensive to begin with how it would go, but it was actually fantastic and really fun, and actually a very rewarding experience, because each person had their own ideas and their own kind of thoughts and processes of how to kind of make the project. So really it was, although I was showing them how to do it, it was all kind of a big experiment that we were working together, bouncing ideas off each other, trying different things. And it was really fun. It was more of a space to experiment with a little guidance from myself, rather than me teaching a lesson step by step kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Next time we see each other, you'll have to teach me how to gild, because that sounds extremely fun.
No problem.
But yeah, thank you, Sian. So I'm going to move on to Faye Almansoor now. And I wanted to do it in this order because I think that in the same way that Sian was inspired by Kuwait's kind of crafting and traditional heritage, you were also inspired by the heritage of Wales. So Faye Almansoor is an illustrator, currently majoring in a design field that aids her with creating atmospherically intriguing spaces. She's been honing her illustration skills for the past several years, and creates artworks that tell a story. Her specialities are character designing, world building, and storytelling. And I can definitely attest to that, and you will as well when you see the work that she's made. But yeah, Faye, how was the trip for you, and what was it that really kind of inspired you on the visit to the UK?
Yeah, so can you guys hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, so to be honest, every single spot that we landed on, I learned so many things. But to be exact, the main thing that kind of powered this project had to be Wales, Carnarvon town. I think talking to the residents there and learning about the mythology, I kind of connected the dots between Carnarvon town and Kuwait, because they're both relatively small areas with such rich mythological culture. And I actually purchased the Mabingion, which is a it's a book of basically stories of Wales. So I purchased that book and I read it, and I also did some research about Kuwaiti mythological culture. Unfortunately, I wasn't as immersed in it. So this project was, it was amazing, because I dived into something that I was not as experienced in. And with my research, which consisted mostly, to be honest, of interviewing people, not reading books as much, because unfortunately those telltales, they were not as documented and I could not find them easily anywhere. So with talking to people, I began to understand the structure of the Kuwaiti folklore, and I began to question, why did we create those stories? Because most of those stories were kind of horror-based, but also they were aimed at children. And I began to understand that those stories were made to basically warn children, or it's a kind of like a thing of obedience, I suppose. And yeah, that was the thing that I understood most. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I remember you going into that bookshop to get that book, and that town was just so.
Yeah, it was raining, I think, that day. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna show some previews of your work now, if you wouldn't mind going into kind of how. So you've already done the research into the myths, but how you came to develop these pieces and what they are.
Yes.
And I promise that I'll share the screen correctly this time.
Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Yes. Yeah, so as Becky mentioned, I create storylines, character designs, and world building. And because I dived into the mythology of Kuwait, I wanted to kind of preserve those stories, because I found a lack of preservation. And with that, I also did not want to kind of repeat what's already been done. So I decided to create something new. I decided to have kind of a modernized approach to accommodate to today's fast-paced technological era, and to also relate it to the younger generation. So yeah, as you can see from the picture, I created a storybook. So the body of work is a storybook, but there's also accompanying it a sculpture. Unfortunately, it's still a work in progress. So yeah, the story, it has elements of older telltales, and I'm going to be talking about the world that I created in the story. It's called the Web World, and it is a world that currently coexists with our world. And so basically it's a parallel universe, and we cannot see it, but it kind of came to life with the connection that we have in our screens and gadgets. Yeah, so the more we use the online world, the deeper and the richer the web is going to be. So just like any other world, the web world does have creatures inside of it, and those creatures feed on the time that we consume being online. So when I did this storybook or created this world, I took myself as an example, because I found myself online most of the day, whether it would be watching something, talking to people, or just scrolling through social media. And that made me question, where do I really belong? Do I belong on the reality realm or the online realm? And that birthed that world. And basically the story follows this young boy who has the same question, and he's gonna have like some encounters with, say, a monster hybrid that has the job to either take people to the online realm or leave them in the reality realm.
Amazing. And so how did you create these, how did you create the storybook? What's the process?
Yeah, so the pre-work process, usually what I do is I go through a bunch of sketches of different character designs, and with this specific character design, which is called the glitch, I think it was in the first page, I was inspired by the mythological monsters that were already in Kuwait, because we have a bunch of them, and they are in kind of like stories, but in Kuwait we call them the hizayat. And those stories, most of them, they contain monster / animal hybrid, and I was inspired by that because I wanted some elements of that in my storybook. So yeah, after I created the character design, I went on to the world building, and what I usually do in my process is that I create tiny little maps. So even if I want to go back and do a certain scene, it would be easy to locate. And yeah, and I create those artworks digitally. That's my main media.
Is that on your iPad or through a different way?
Yes, through the iPad.
Yeah, your iPad that you were armed with every step of the way on the trip, which
Yes.
is amazing. We need to share some of the outtakes of just the lovely drawings that you did on our bus from Yorkshire to Wales.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but
I
yeah,
remember those.
thank you, Faye.
Thank you.
Sorry, I feel like I'm whipping around, but we've got a lot of amazing artists to cover. So I'm going to move to Ben Malcolmson now in the forest over there. So Ben is a photographer born and raised in Belfast, Northern Ireland. His practice deals with communication of the landscape, looking at the familiar and psychological complexities of the South, with performance-based undertones as well. So Ben, what was your kind of the thing that surprised you most about the journey to Kuwait and what you took away from it?
Yeah, well, I think that this trip was a very pivotal point with my artistic career and I would say my life. I think traveling to Kuwait offered me the needed space to kind of pause and reflect with my own like native city and sense of self. There was, coming from Belfast, Northern Ireland, a region with a lot of complexities and conflict, just removing myself from that and position myself and ground myself in a completely new culture and to immerse myself in such beauty was such an experience. And I think just, like I said, having that space to pause and reflect to who I am as an artist and how to position myself as a maker, and just to know a little bit more about the actual heritage and culture of my own province and land was very rewarding in a lot of ways. And when I went back home, that was very much the catalyst in terms of the work that I would create on from that. But just being with such talented artists that we met in Kuwait was also very inspiring as well. And just talking to the people that had so much passion for like their country and their land and their culture. And for me, coming from a region that is less progressive, to say the least, in other parts of Europe, just to have so much pride in their country, as Kuwaitis do for Kuwait. That sense of pride for me was lacking for where I'm from. And I kind of want to discover that. I really wanted to feel Northern Irish, to feel pride in where I come from. And I think, like I said, that was very much the catalyst for this kind of exploration into the heritage of my native land and my connection to the industry of Northern Ireland, and just I guess the heritage of that, and to be proud of that and myself.
Yeah, and so I had the privilege of going over to Belfast for the opening of Ben's exhibition at Belfast Exposed, which is the amazing photography gallery that nominated him, and which we also all visited on the exchange as well with the Kuwaiti artists. And I know that they were all really impressed by the archives and just the work that as a gallery they're doing. But I'll show some of the images that you had in the exhibition, but if you could just talk about few of the different work that you made, and I know you had some mixed media as well, and yeah, just the opportunity of having, because it was your first solo exhibition, right? Okay, amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this body of work that I made was titled Murmur, and this was a body of work, as Becky mentioned, that was exhibited in Belfast Exposed Gallery in Belfast earlier this year. And the body of work kind of comprised of photography, video, sculpture, and installation. And, you know, with this body of work, I really wanted to create an atmosphere that was poetic yet poignant on my relationship with the kind of politically charged Northern Irish landscape. And I did this through various ways of understanding my native land and city, through the known Irish trades in the 19th and 20th centuries. And like I said, my family connection to that. Also along with just being a young person living, working in a city that is constantly changing and shifting to being a more progressive society. And being in the margins of that was very interesting to explore through this work. So the work that you're seeing now, this is an image of a murmuration of starling birds over the Albert Bridge, which is one of the kind of main bridges that connects kind of the city centre of Belfast to kind of East Belfast. It's kind of like a major kind of central hub, as Belfast was known for shipping. It built the Titanic. You know, it's very much an heritage with craftsmanship with that and industry. And so the river and water is very much connected to, I guess, Belfast culture, Northern Irish culture. And the birds themselves, I kind of want to focus on them, as these starling birds, it's quite rare for them to see them in a city to do these murmurations. So I kind of thought it was a nice kind of poetic metaphor as like a family, as a cluster, you know, kind of almost entrapped in this kind of industrial city. And at the time when I was making this work, that's how I felt about my city. I felt trapped. I felt, you know, encapsulated by this kind of, Northern Irish Belfast mentality that was kind of very much entrapping me and trying to want to break away from that. So this image is very much a response to that. And these other, the other one as well with the hands, and this is me as my Polaroid. This is the Instamatic Polaroid camera picture that I physically removed from its film and transferred onto paper, so image transfer. And for me, I really wanted to push my practice. Before this, I was very much just exploring photography, and I always had a creative experimental urge to kind of push the boundaries of what photography means to me. And with this opportunity, it was the perfect platform for me to experiment more with kind of sculptural interests, with kind of textures and patterns. And like I said, looking at this project and looking at history and heritage of Northern Ireland, and Belfast was known for its major linen production in the 19th and 20th centuries. And I went to a city just outside Belfast. I went to this museum that specialized in linen fabric, and they gifted me some linen fabric in which I experimented on and created these kind of waves and shapes to kind of complement this kind of poetic, soft tone that was running throughout the exhibition. So yeah, a lot of thought went into it in terms of the execution. And like I said, I really wanted to have the exhibition, the physical exhibition, as an experience of this feeling of entrapment, but also this kind of progressive movement and migration of something better. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, yeah, it was so lovely to go to the exhibition, and to see your speech and everything was just a really wonderful moment for the project. And I think that everyone that's worked on this project will agree, like seeing the work that's come out after over a year for everyone of working on this, I think everyone should just be really proud of themselves, because it's great. I'm just really proud of everybody. So yeah, Sarah, if you wouldn't mind going next. So Sarah Ismail Alsayed is a freelance painter and illustrator. Born in Egypt, she grew up in Kuwait and graduated university with a BA in English language and literature. In the past few years, she's illustrated 2 published children's books and participated in many exhibitions in the region. And she has also in the past run workshops with children in Kuwait and Egypt exploring art and nature, two themes which are very prevalent within her work. So yeah, Sarah, so had you visited the UK before the trip, or was this your first visit?
This was my first visit.
And so I guess most people, when they visit the UK, they fly or they go to London and see that. So I imagine the fact that we didn't go to London at all and went straight out to the UK regions, it offered a very different insight into what a lot of people have as their first experience. What things kind of inspired you by the trip, and was there anything that really kind of, that surprised you?
Well, actually, I was glad that we didn't stay in that. Nothing like wrong with London or anything, but I am more of a nature person. Like I like to be close to nature than in a city. So actually, the trip to the UK was very like life-turning and a turning point in my life practice and as an individual as well. Well, actually, there's nothing that. It wasn't as a surprise, but like as an astonishing moment when I saw the wall in Ireland, Northern Ireland, the peace wall. It was really amazing to see a thing that was made to separate two different like group of people that is used now to express ideas in a more non-violent way, in a more a really peaceful way. That's why it's called the wall of peace. So that was really astonishing like thing that I've seen. So yeah, and the other thing that really impacted my visit to the UK was in Wales, and the history in the architect and how everything in the place was like an historical museum. Like you're walking throughout history, like these places that people been walking before like for thousands of years and still there. Like the castles have been used for like everyday life, for restaurants and people to go like around their like ordinary life. Nothing been demolished, nothing like been like it's not kept away from the people around, so people are living in it. That's the thing. And the nature, of course, because in my practice, I'm always focused on nature and animals and the creatures and how they are like, they're like a lot of animals that are like in different parts of places, but they're coming from the same families, but they're like, it's fun to see like the different animals in different places and different botanical plants. And so that was like very fascinating to see.
Yeah, I remember actually when we were in Kuwait, Dima took us around a tour of some of the old, I think like old land where different trees had been imported from, I think it was like Australia to kind of suit the different colonial powers that were there. And I think that nature can is such an interesting indicator of place.
Yeah.
How did that those kind of takeaways impact your work, which I'm going to show now? So and that was called Parallel Universe, if I am correct. Yeah.
So while we during our visit into the UK, mostly what I did before is I used to walk like with my head up looking around, but at some point like I started looking down, which like I've noticed something that I wouldn't usually notice, like walking ahead and seeing a lot. I've seen the white flowers and the white plants that were growing on the ground, and that made me realize that I've never really looked down in Kuwait on the floor or on the sand, and I have no idea about the wild plants and botanical life that are like originated in Kuwait, or like original to Kuwait. So that actually embarked I think a never-ending journey and pursuit that I'm still following to research and explore the history of plants in Kuwait and the wildlife, as well as the region around Kuwait, like the Arab region as a whole. If I will talk about this piece in particular, it's called Into the Wild, Born into the Wild. The animal you've seen here is the fennec fox. Fennec fox is a kind of desert fox. you can scarcely see in Kuwait, but it's mostly famous in Egypt as well, because like I have an Egyptian heritage, and as well I was raised and born in Kuwait, born in Egypt, raised in Kuwait. So that's a phoenix fox, and these are the plants, some of the plants that grow original here in Kuwait in a sandy, in a salty sand, mostly near to the sea. This one, the one in the green one, is called gulman here in Kuwait, gulman, and in Egypt it has another name, is Suwaida egyptica. So that's actually something that connected me in Kuwait and Egypt as well. I have like shown a connection between the two countries. The colors I've chosen and the clothes I've chosen, like it's really like a different, I've never really actually thought of clothes and choice of color before, but now like I'm really focusing on the clothes that really express the Arabic world or the Arabia, like using the fez, or instance the fez hat, the red, like that one. It has a really interesting history, because like as of my research, I didn't really know where it originated from. Some say that's coming from the Ottoman Empire, but now as you see that Moroccan also wear that fez hat, but Ottoman Empire like wasn't really a part of Morocco. It wasn't really a part of the Ottoman Empire. So it's an ever-ending research about the heritage of botany and animals in the Arab region, and the clothes that people were like been wearing, and how they represent other different culture in the Arab region. So yeah. And mostly, this is actually the meow cat, Egyptian meow, the cat. And these are also plants that you would see in Kuwait. And why I've chosen children is because mainly I work with children. And with children, I've always felt more comfortable because of the innocence and how things can be so transparent through their eyes. Like if they explore nature or like things, they would not really do any harm to nature, rather than explore and learn from, rather than turn it into a city or cut the woods or anything like that, like what grown up would do. So yeah, this actually, I would think that this pursuit of researching the history of traditional clothes, or like the botanical feature and the critters in Kuwait and in Egypt, it's like actually like it's not going to end. Like I would keep going on that research.
Amazing. Yeah, they're absolutely lovely. And so I love the fact that you like looking down is just, yeah, we always just like need to change our vision basically to see more. And I think that I'm glad that the trip like awarded you that. So is someone like who, I'm trying to work out who's making a little bit of noise, but we'll move on. Oh, is it Sonata? Where's that person? Sorry guys. But yeah, if everyone who's not speaking could have their microphone on mute, that would be brilliant, please. Just so there's no distractions. So the next person I'd like to speak to is Staneslas. So Staneslas is a Sri Lankan dancer and artist born and raised in Kuwait. He's a self-taught freestyle performance artist who believes in expressing via movement. His base is hip hop, but is versatile and experienced in different styles. And he formally started his performance and learning and journey when he joined Lapa Loyak in 2014, where he now works as an event and dance associate. So yeah, Stan, hello.
Oh.
So it was also your first time visiting the UK, but you've done quite a lot of touring before with Loyak and as a dancer. How did it compare to kind of other experiences as a touring artist?
Okay, so first of all, hello everyone. My name is pronounced Staneslas, exactly like Becky. So if you want to say my name, that's how you say it, or Stan in short. Also, my past visits have been all through like the Arab region. Actually, I've been to Lebanon, Jordan, but going to the UK last year was my first time in, I would say, in the European region. So the difference was obviously is like very, very different. I've never seen that side of the world, and it was kind of more than what I thought it would be. It was awesome. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so were there any particular places on the trip that really kind of caught your eye, and in kind of led you to be inspired to create your well, we'll show it in a minute, but a very kind of interdisciplinary work, also in collaboration, which is slightly different from some of the other artists' avenues that they took.
So yes, definitely. There was more than one thing that I was inspired by, because we were given so much information in the 7 to 8 days that we were there. And it was all processed, but not completely processed until I came back to Kuwait and I like thought of everything that happened. It was what I also got to realize, that I wasn't just inspired by the places, but it were mainly people who we met through the trip that were giving me what I actually needed. It was first in Belfast when we saw all the documents that were the archives. We met, I'm so sorry, but I forgot his name, but he took us all around town, and he was one of the photographers from the time of...
Mervyn.
Yes, Mervyn. So this man obviously is like a legend there. He's done all this stuff, and then he was still so interested and so humble, explaining to us who are like, who were born yesterday, about all of this history and work that he's done and he's gone through with all the difficulties. It was very inspiring for me, and the work I did was also based on like people like him that I met through the trip. It was him, then there was Sinead also in Belfast, in Yorkshire it was more of the sculpture park and the artists whose work was there, and like Henry Moore, or the chair that I was sitting on by the lake with the poem thing. Okay. Yeah, at that spot. And when we went to Wales, it was pretty much everything, and then the professor we met as well. It's the stories that these people had to share and how they were expressing it, like, and you could see that they don't, it's, if they could relive that, they would totally do everything that they've done the same way. It was the interest that got me more interested. And yeah.
Okay, and so how did that kind of transform itself into your work that you've created, and would you be able to explain the work?
Yeah, so obviously when I came back, I was a little bit confused of what I wanted to do, and over time I decided that I wanted to relate this to first myself, but also to how could this work relate to everybody else who's actually looking at it. So basically my work is based on the journey of ourselves, like us being ourselves, basically. Like how many of us can actually say that I am myself 100% at any given time of the day? I mean, I don't know how many can, but I really can. It's really hard for me, especially like to express how you feel at any given place or time. And this also applies to my artistic practice, because I come from a more commercial art side, like, you know, so what you're asked for is to be done. So like they want this, okay, we're gonna do this. There was not much of creative freedom coming from what I've experienced. So going on this trip, like when we were there, I got to experience firsthand what it is to have creative freedom and how it is to be respected as an artist outside of your zone, is because we obviously met so many artists, yeah, and all of these people had different kinds of work, but everybody was given the equal sense of respect and appreciation that for their work. And I want to express that kind of journey because I wanted each of us who's looking at the work to relate and to think how we can make expressing ourselves more convenient in a way, but also to keep it more vague, as in I related this to myself, but I also want to keep it vague is because each of them, when they look at it, I want them to probably relate to their own self. Like it could be anything. You don't have to be a dancer, and the message doesn't necessarily mean I can't dance in front of people or I can dance freely alone. That's not the case. It's basically a metaphor for whatever that you do and how you express yourself amongst people.
Yeah.
And basically getting yourself out there, because meeting all these people and seeing all this art that's preserved and the work that's been done all through these years is basically somebody just got up and said, I am going to put this out there. I am going to do this. I'm going to share my work. So doing that is the first step in yourself. So for me, this was the opportunity to like make that big step. So I'm very attached to that term, and I would say my work is based on that.
Yeah, amazing. And so you created because of the lockdown as well, I know that you started working on a video in collaboration with other artists and also building this structure as well. So the video, this is a still from the video, but if you want to see a preview of it, you can see it on our Instagram page. Oh, no. But yeah, and so it just quickly, what kind of inspired you and brought you to make the structure alongside the video, which has dancing elements, which is kind of more your usual medium? So yeah, why was it that you kind of wanted to expand into something a bit different?
Okay, so I generally I'm very interested in everything. I know it's like I'm a bit of a scatterbrain. I like doing every single thing that I see. If I find interest to it, I want to learn it. I want to gain the skills, and then continue doing it. So through that way, like over the years, I have picked up, I do photography, videography, I do a bit of writing and other elements such as organizing and getting things together. Basically, you'd say as in like a director kind of. Yeah. So I wanted to experience that is because you guys gave me freedom to do what I wanted to do. And this was my chance, because I don't know if I'll be able to do this again. Hopefully I will. But this was my shot to like put things together, see what I can do. And why I wanted those people with me is because, well, they're artists who are like me. They've not been out there too much and they don't know their value, I would say, in a way. Like none of us, from most of my friends that we grew up here, being an artist was almost a side thing. So I just wanted, the least I could do was get 2 of my friends to join me. And because obviously I need their things to direct, and these guys are amazing artists that I've had the privilege of knowing for years, and I just wanted to showcase their work along with mine. And yeah, also this painting, when we were in Belfast, there was I think it was the Japanese artist who was painting on the wall with soil. So when I came back to Kuwait, I saw my friend's work and it reminded me of that one. So immediately in my head, I wanted to incorporate him somehow, because he uses he does not use, this is not all paintbrush. It is something that he uses toothpicks to do what he's done here. So this is a very little minimal work of paintbrush. Mostly it's toothpick that has all these details. If you could zoom in a bit, you'll see the lines. Yeah, so that's all done with toothpicks. And this is kind of, he holds this as a secret. I'm just telling you guys, please don't tell him I told you. Yeah, that's why I wanted him to do this piece. Basically, it's an embodiment of the video. It's the video, but in a physical piece.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I'm glad that the commission enabled you to do something that you'd always wanted to do and bring in other people.
Thank you, guys, basically.
And yes, so Sheikha, if you could unmute, please. So Shaykh Al-Habshi is an artist, illustrator, and designer, currently studying for her bachelor's degree in interior architecture. Her art is mainly centered around identity and self-care as a form of coping in a highly technological age, while still trying to understand her Eastern family and heritage as she develops her own voice in these changing times. It feels funny reading everyone's bios. But yeah, Sheikha, so what was there anything from the trip that particularly inspired you, and how did you kind of go from the process into making your work?
I think one of during the trip, one of the most interesting things to see in the UK was everyone's openness, especially artists discussing the issues that they wanted to discuss. I felt, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're like jumping a bit, but I'll let you know whether it happens again.
Okay. It was just interesting to see everyone being so open and honest, and there was a very kind of vulnerability that was happening, especially when we visited the Moston Gallery, and to see different female artists specifically talk about the issues that they were struggling with in the UK, for example, and trying to see kind of like the correlation between how Western women may perceive domestic life and something that is a completely different experience than the way that we experience it here in Kuwait. Mm-hmm. So their openness and their ability to talk about the issues that they were going through, and in general, just meeting so many different artists who were so expressive, kind of made me want to, like Shan said previously, turn the mirror back onto myself and look at my own kind of family and heritage and the people that I kind of surround myself with, and specifically the people who identify as women growing up in Kuwait, and seeing how their relationship to their environment kind of created their own experience rather than just my experience as a Kuwaiti woman. Because I began to realize that even though Kuwait is a very tiny country, but the amount of different experiences that everybody has made me want to focus on my art in specific with that.
Okay, amazing. And so if I show your pieces now, if you could explain how the process by which you created them, and because you're also someone who kind of experimented with a slightly new medium as well. Just going to share the screen. Is the screen showing?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Sheikha.
So to be honest, I started working on my project around November, and it was a very thorough process because I had to find 4 different individuals in Kuwait that had different struggles in relation to their experience and existence in Kuwait, and how that existence was challenged through religion, through marital status, through their own identity as and gender expression, and lastly their nationality, and how like the question of nationality in gender. And this kind of allowed me to really research into books specifically and papers specifically written by Kuwaiti women. And when I was trying to find books written about Kuwaiti women from the point of view of a Kuwaiti woman, I could barely find any. I think I found maybe 3, and to even get those books in Kuwait was difficult. So I had to talk to multiple people to kind of see what is, a Kuwaiti woman's experience from her own point of view. So after I read those books and I found 4 different individuals, I basically interviewed all of them. I recorded it, and then I transcribed all of their interviews. And from the transcriptions, I was able to come out with kind of drawings, and I put those drawings together in my usual style, which is a bit kind of more of a I don't want to say cartoonish, but more symbolic. But then what I realized when I had those symbolic pieces, I realized the issue of safety in Kuwait and the concept of privacy. That even as much as I do want to discuss certain topics, there is this realm of fear that as a woman, as you know, a young Kuwaiti individual, there's still this idea of trying to be able to speak about certain issues but still be rather safe. So I basically started abstracting the pieces. So they kind of started to basically abstract into various forms. And so I wanted to create pieces that from afar that might look like, oh, just, you know, a regular painting. But the more you look into it, you see that there are figures that exist throughout the paintings in themselves. And one of the best things that through the Arab British Center is that it gave me the opportunity to experience weaving as a art form, which is something that I've always wanted to do, but I just never had the opportunity to do that or the funds to kind of even take time to teach myself. Like, because I had built the loom through a carpenter in Kuwait because it was rather large. And basically while I was weaving and listening to these audios and working throughout, I realized how these individuals that are not really, their voices are never heard in the mainstream media or even in our like Kuwaiti media. I began to realize how they kind of make up the fabric of our own society. And so that's why throughout even the paintings, you can see that there are the pieces look woven, even if it's just acrylic paint. But while I was working on the paintings, I had to go through it with like 4 or 5 layers because I wanted that complexity to shine through, that sometimes that individuals that we may see in Kuwait, which might, and I think there's this era of idea of privilege that exists in Kuwait that does, but through these complex individuals, you see how these struggles do exist, but nobody talks about them because it's either not a safe environment or the concept of privacy is too overwhelming for them to discuss.
Yeah, they look incredible. And just on, obviously we've not seen them in real life, but what's the scale of everything?
It's quite large. I think the paintings themselves are 120 by 1 meter by 120. And the weave itself is almost a meter long and half a meter wide.
Amazing. And how long did the weaving take to complete?
A very long time. I was supposed to do 4 weaves, but 1 weave ended up taking me, because I had to teach myself how to weave. So that whole process took a month. And then with different textures and things like that, and trying to do forms, that took me maybe about 2 months, especially with lockdown in school. So yeah.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for sharing. And last but not least, we have Emii Alrai tuning in from Scotland. So yeah, Emii, how was the trip to Kuwait for you? And because you had been to the Middle East before. Oh, I haven't done your bio. That's why this doesn't make sense. Emii Alrai is a first-generation Iraqi-British artist based in Leeds, but currently in Scotland. Emii's practice is concerned with the themes of identity, particularly between Britain and the Middle East. She is intrigued by the residue which is left by these cultural collisions, which manifest in the Western appropriation of cultural objects, artifact, and language. But yeah, so my previous question.
For me, like, going to Kuwait was just unbelievable. Like, I remember like getting the call and just like, I was in Scotland with my mum and we just were like jumping up and down and screaming, just because it was just this like amazing opportunity to actually like go to Kuwait, which like my family are Iraqi, and the opportunity to get to go somewhere that's so like intertwined with Iraqi history, and to get to spend time there and like meet people and see what's happening in terms of the art sector in Kuwait was just so incredible. I mean, for me, like going on the tours that Medina did, especially like the Coordinates of Memory tour, where we walked around the city and kind of were thinking about and learning about how the landscape of Kuwait had changed so much, like post-war, but also like with the pearl diving industry and how that kind of changed the landscape, and trying to figure out like how memory and identity have kind of been born through like this architectural plan, and how that kind of was rewritten, and how that's like now kind of shaping like an identity, was really interesting for me to learn about, because I think like with my practice I've been really preoccupied with ideas of how place and how objects, specifically like artifacts in museums, can contain so much like identity and narrative and history and nostalgia. But kind of going to Kuwait, I think for me like has really like changed a lot of the ways which I'm starting to look at my practice, in terms of how on a wider scale, like rather than just object, like how like our landscapes themselves like do define what we consider our heritage and our identity, and where that kind of breaks and where it severs. And I guess like going to Kuwait and obviously meeting everybody there who is incredible and so unbelievably welcoming, and just had so much to tell us and to share, and the openness of that, like I don't know, just it was really like an amazing journey for me, like getting to go and speak Arabic and getting to go and learn about this history that I've kind of been told about through my family who now live in Scotland, and like having heard about, you know, these stories just from this very like tiny bubble like at home in Scotland, and then getting to go and experience that like in Kuwait itself, and like just be in the place was just really incredible for me.
Yeah, and that's so interesting about what you said about how it's made you look at your kind of wider practice differently. And you're slightly different from everyone else here in the sense that your work is yet to be exhibited at the Hepworth Wakefield, but what kind of process have you been getting up to, and what angle will you be exploring it through when it's reopened?
So yeah, my project basically like took a massive backseat like since COVID started, and I'd started getting some parts. I've actually got some show and tell things, so I'm really sorry, I'm going to be bumbling in with some metal works. I don't have any images, but I was starting to look at the Hepworth who nominated me, basically invited me to kind of come and start looking at their collections a little bit, and I'd had a few meetups with the Hepworth before lockdown and last year, and it was kind of building up to a conversation about doing a potential collections intervention within the gallery space, and looking at like Barbara Hepworth's work specifically, and her maquettes, and the kind of relationship of material and like forgery of materials as well. So I guess like I'd started to think about like the ideas of display and armature, especially like drawing from like the Americana Centre in Kuwait, and how objects are displayed, and like how that kind of almost like, I want to say like a Western tradition of like display kind of is now found in like so many other museums like across the world, and kind of thinking about whether that kind of almost like jails objects into a specific mode of viewing, or whether it's like a way of kind of bringing them forward and understanding them. So I've kind of been like, before lockdown, so I'm going to be a bit Blue Peter here, so I'm really sorry everyone.
Here's
kind of weird trap like armatures, which the idea was to have like either works made out of jesmonite or clay or copper that were going to be sat on top, kind of based on vessels that were found in Kuwait, and also like in the Arab world, that also are found in British museums, like in their collections. So kind of like thinking about different ways of displaying objects. Sorry, the lighting in my room is very, very bad, I'm very sorry. And then also like, sorry, this like massive armature that was supposed to be placed on a wall. So this is kind of where I'm at the moment, kind of working with metal through the fabricator that I use, and kind of was hoping to have like a smaller series of works as well, like trying to think about forms, because normally the work that I make is quite large scale installation, which kind of covers up the majority of a space or a room, and I really wanted to think about how to embed narrative and this idea of identity, or this idea of like objects and their history within like a really small scale object, rather than like a full room installation. So I guess like for me, like I kind of wanted to make works that kind of responded to that, and objects that we saw on the trip.
Okay, amazing. Well, I really hope that they still are able to be in the Hepworth, because yeah, it was one of the galleries that we visited in the UK visit, and it's a very I feel like the vision of your work with the kind of super clean contemporary nature of the gallery will be really amazing. But yeah, so that is all of our artists kind of show and tell. As I said earlier, Katherine Midgley unfortunately couldn't be here today, but we'll have everybody's work on the Making Marks website, which will be launching next month. So you'll be able to see what she got up to in Glasgow over a few months of community workshops that she programmed, which were called Making Space. But yeah, does anybody have any questions for any of our artists, or for all of our artists, based on everything that we've kind of just covered? Feel free to put them in the chat, or to raise your hand and you can speak if you like. Okay, that's fine. I have lots of questions, so it's all good. We also don't really have that much time. So one of the things that I wanted to ask—
Haidar has a question.
Oh, Haidar, sorry. Go. You need to
unmute myself. Sorry, I thought there was another hand going on, Michael. My question to Faye, I think following your work a lot on Instagram and what you just showed us, it reminded me of the film director Lars von Trier, the Danish film director. He always uses women to kind of portray he projects his own mental issues into a woman, into his main films, and you always also use a boy character to kind of show, to kind of in a way, you project into the character your own thinking or feeling. Is that deliberate, or is that something that kind of happens for a different reason?
Let me just mute myself. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Thank you, Haidar. I actually did not really think about that when I look at my work, because I usually just draw and whatever comes out, comes out. But that's a really good point. Of course, for future projects, I am definitely planning ahead, and I'm planning to include more diversity in my characters, with genders, with different nationalities, and I wanted to also kind of be rooted to Kuwaiti cultures and to Kuwaiti heritage. Yeah.
Thank you, Faye. Was there any other questions? I don't want to jump the gun. Okay.
I have a question. Sorry.
Oh, go on, Sam.
Yeah, it's also to Faye. So, okay, in one of the sketches of the book, there was binary code. Does that mean anything? Does it, or it was just ones and zeros?
There's a what?
There was binary code as part of your artwork. So does that translate to anything, or is it just ones and zeros so we can?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for noticing that. So when I created the web world, I wanted it to kind of reflect the internet and the codes and the computers. So that's why the ones and zeros are there, because it is a world that's within us in a way, but we don't see it. We see it as code. We always see it as code. So that's why I wanted, that's why I wanted to convey it as ones and zeros, and as kind of like, I don't know if you can see the shape, but it's kind of like sticky and webby. That's how I kind of see the web world. Yeah, thank you.
Great, so we have some questions coming in. So Kauthar has asked Emii if you could please talk about how the armatures were made and whether they were created to hold specific objects or vice versa.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'm not muted, that's good. I work with a metal fabricator in Leeds who supported me on a lot of projects that I've done. And we have a really, I'm really lucky in the relationship I've got with him, that I kind of go and I draw up the armatures that I want made, and then we kind of work together to think about which ways will best hold, or which ways will best kind of aesthetically work with the objects themselves. I normally have a kind of plan of the object that I've got that will be going into an armature, and then I go to my fabricator and ask him how the metal will best hold it, because a lot of the works I do make are quite lightweight, but I kind of want to give that kind of illusion of them being really heavy or really precious and made out of these really valuable materials. So definitely, yeah, like I kind of go with an idea, normally do like the worst like sketches, and I have to go and be like, I'm so sorry, I don't have any like proper measurements, but I want them to be like this big and this wide, and we kind of work together through that. Hopefully that's answered the question.
Yeah, definitely. So Rebecca Hardy-Griffith says, congratulations to all the artists. Great to hear everyone's experience and influence. My question is, what is the next step for you all? So if anyone wants to jump in.
Surviving Corona.
Hmm?
Surviving Corona.
Yeah.
I can go if next step for me is working on shows that were postponed that were supposed to be happening this year. So I guess at the moment through Corona I've been kind of developing research and have been doing a collaborative project with AKA and Franz Keka with in Canada with an artist called Eve Tony, I think that's how you say her second name, and we've been kind of building up a collaboration which will culminate in an exhibition next year in Canada, which is really exciting, as well as participating in Jarwood solo presentations hopefully next spring if everything goes well, following the coronavirus, if things kind of open up. That's kind of my plan for the next steps, and I do feel that like making marks has been such like an instrumental project in helping me get to the research that I'm doing at the moment, and also like the opportunities that I've been really lucky to participate in post that.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, one of the questions that I wanted to ask, which maybe is for someone else as well, is that it's obviously been a year since the exchange now, and some of you have touched on it, but how do you feel that your practice has changed within that year, or how has it developed, either through making marks or otherwise? And that's to anyone that might want to have it.
I'll take that one. Can you hear me? No?
Yeah.
Cool. I have seen actually a lot of more. I think I've become more confident, to be honest, and also after coming back, transitioning back to Kuwait took a while. Like I had this whole spirit thing going on for like a month and a half, and then I was back to normal. But then every time I'd lose sense, like, you know, I just opened the book from when we were in the UK, the book, you know, which we were all like given.
Sketchbook.
Yeah, the sketchbook. So I would open that and just like go through the stuff, and immediately it would like give this kick back in. Okay, you did that. That is good. And like, you know, that's so like I would read it and I would imagine the things we were doing at the time or like the place that we were at. So it would always like boost up and like push forward more. So I think it really helped in being more confident, or actually looking at my work a little more differently and like questioning it. So yeah, I think it's a good improvement.
Brilliant. Does anyone else also want to answer that question?
Yeah, here. Yeah, actually one of the main things that changed about my practice after the trip was I began exploring my character design and world building through three-dimensional ways. I began building tiny little sculptures out of clay to see how the character would look like in different angles, and that helped me also to create like the sketches better. And because in my field of study, interior architecture, I am already familiar with a bunch of 3D softwares, so I began using those 3D softwares to kind of see the sceneries. And the main thing that made me explore the 3D kind of situation was the sculpture museum, because I saw the influence that one sculpture had in a room. And yeah, sorry about the clock.
Oh.
But yeah.
That's so funny. I have a bird clock that also normally interrupts the Zoom, so
it had to interrupt at this moment. Well, yeah, that's it.
Who also I've been trying to draw a lot since I got back. Still working on it, but like so we met a lot of artists, and like obviously I was with people who were drawing 24/7, so I had to like like pick it up a little bit. So now I think I've gotten like 2% better. So 98 more to go.
Yeah, and I think that we were lucky enough to have Dalal with us as a kind of mentor, and she runs Manifesto 13, which is an art school in Kuwait, and just having her there to kind of encourage different artistic kind of activities, like taking in a sculpture and drawing it, or interacting with something in the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, was a really kind of holistic way to absorb everything that was going on, but also really ground like even like us as facilitators as well. I feel like we took some of that with us as well, so I'm delighted that that's something that's continued with you. I
think Sarah was gonna say something.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, hello. So one of the things that changed in my practice is adding more focused research rather than before, and matter of actually trying to remake the mediums that I've used. Like in this project, for instance, I made some experiments in doing some pure cotton paper, like using Egyptian cotton. Some of them were failed in attempts, and some of them were really good kind of papers. So actually using the natural elements more in my practice, I've used as well like Gulf water in the mixing, like not normal tap water, to see the difference between the from like salty water, like naturally salt water, and the mineral water. So that's actually like adding more research and adding more like experiments and scientifically testing things and scientifically researching things to have it like to have the work have more depth and have more like sort of story behind it. That actually like changed, like seeing the artist there and how everything has tons of stories behind it and tons of research and tons of experimenting in different mediums and different substance. So yeah.
Amazing. And Sian, I remember you saying while we were on the trip that like you hadn't really been focusing on your artistic practice, and it offered a kind of new opportunity to revisit that. Since making the sculpture, have you had, I know you have your own business and you're extremely busy, but do you feel like you've kind of, is it something that you've kind of pressed onwards since the sculpture, or how has your practice been recently?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Sarah was saying and the other artists about research having more of a kind of an important role within making the work. I've been much more kind of research heavy with my work in terms of really kind of exploring ideas before actually making stuff, because I think what I used to do in the past before this kind of experience, I'm still concerned with material and materiality and how your preconceptions affect the way you view different materials. But I used to make a lot of my work, I just used to just go and just do random stuff with stuff and just kind of see where that goes. But I think I've realised, especially with this trip, the importance of research and thinking about what you're going to do, researching the kind of inherent connotations with different materials, the history behind different materials. And so I am progressing slowly, but it's more of I think a better kind of researched work, which I think, like Sarah was saying, is gonna turn out to be a better well-rounded piece of work.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel like that's definitely the common thread between maybe all of the work, really, which is really interesting to kind of hear you all talk about. We're kind of coming up to the end of the time, so I just wanted to ask if any of the artists or anyone else had anything that they kind of wanted to add or share or tell.
Hi, Becky.
Sorry. Oh,
hi, Dima.
Hello, Dima goes first.
Okay. Hi, Nadia. Hello, Becky, as well, and hello for all basically the artists. It's like after all the presentation, I felt the need for like a moment of appreciation for all the work. It was really like overwhelming and overwhelmingly beautiful, and it's and I wish I'm inside a real space, watching and feeling the presence of those objects being displayed properly. I just want to really like comment a little bit about it was really fascinating for me as a person who actually gave the tour or a first glance at a city to you as artists, and then see what you actually grasp. This is, to me, is a treasure I have as a tour guide or as a person accompanying like a person who's like a foreigner to a land. This actually was what gave me the passion to go forward and actually create these kind of stories in the city. It was very interesting to hear, for example, Ben talk about that beautiful kind of sentiment that he's seen in Kuwaitis talking about their city, also about the relationship that Emii drew about the relationship between objects and landscapes. It was really, really beautiful and powerful, and I can foresee a lot of interesting results out of them. I've also seen a bit of struggle in finding information or resources to learn more about some issues and some topics, and I wish they've been asking me I could have directed them towards some books and on the subjects they needed, because they are rare. Like, for example, about women in Kuwait, what Sheikha talked about. Yes, there are very few books about women in Kuwait. I have a couple of books that I can share for her, a much older ones that she can actually, or you can refer to and look at if you like. There are also books about Sedu, of course. Many books about Sedu written. They've been writing about it for years from different angles, actually, from the practical angle, from philosophical angles. Also, they've been like a book about an artist's take on Sedu. It's about Sami Muhammad, but it's more about his take about Sedu, for example, and semantics. And it was very also interesting. So you can always ask me for resources if you're interested in a particular angle that you want to learn more about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Dima. Honestly, the trip that you curated for us around Kuwait was just absolutely incredible. It was such a privilege to be kind of in your posse and just led around to all of you. It felt like you knew everyone and they were all your best friend, and everyone greeted us with such welcoming, open arms, and was so generous with their time and with the sharing of their experiences. So, and
Thank
likewise
you.
in the UK as well, everyone that took the time to speak to us was just, yeah, brilliant. So the whole experience of both the residencies and then seeing the work that's been produced as a result is just, yeah, I'm like absolutely delighted.
To me, the encounters are what counts, actually. This kind of human encounter that we had at that particular time and space is what's amazing and interesting, and it's inspiring for all of us, actually. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and I think it's particularly important at the moment, like what with travel restrictions and us all like not being able to move around as much, to kind of, it kind of feels like this project was part of a different time where it was much easier to do that. And I hope that these kinds of connections can be stimulated digitally, and that the kind of, clearly the benefits of international travel on emerging artists is many, as a opportunity for reflection. So just from the kind of the Arab British Centre perspective, we would love to be able to do something like this again, because it's clearly like amazing. But yeah, does anyone else have anything to add, or shall we call it a day?
I just wanted to like leave one of the very small like closing remark. I think like the Arab British Centre and the British Council are very like-minded organisations, and we're in the business of cultural relations. And I think this project really shows that, you know, these sort of these like interacting with culture, with another culture, and sort of and actively going out and trying to like build these projects. It's really not about us on any side going and imposing something from where we come from, or taking taking something from somewhere else. I think what we've learned from all the artists is that what we gain personally, and the sort of the reflections that we have in our own life, and like how beneficial that is. And I think there is I think, yeah, to me it warms my heart, because having only worked in the sort of cultural relations sector, I feel like, you know, this really shows how it works and how it's really important. And we look forward to continuing to work with the British Council on the next phase of Making Marks, which is a digital programme. And I'm hoping that in new ways we'll build those connections again, and we'll have more people in the UK reflecting or learning about the Arab world, and how that, you know, we can learn a lot from the region, from the Arab world in the UK, and yeah, how it can enhance our lives and our society and culture here as well.
Yeah. And so yeah, just a quick plug for the rest of the Making Marks digital programme, which is happening over the rest of this week and next week as well. So on Thursday, you'll be able to find out more about Sarah's work through an Instagram takeover that she'll be doing on the Arab British Centre Instagram. And you'll be able to see the work of the Kuwaiti artists, including the preview for Stan's film, on our Instagram already. Next week, we have 2 free workshops aimed at early career artists. The first one is led by Haida Dawashi, who's here, and that will be on why digital matters. So looking at the importance of having a professional and visually brilliant online presence, and how to achieve that. So that's on Tuesday at 1 p.m. UK time. And then on Wednesday, in complement to that workshop, we're running a workshop with a lawyer called Fanula Rogers, who will be doing a kind of crash course in digital art law and what you need to know when you're posting about your work, posting your work online. So just kind of upskilling artists based in the UK and in the Gulf, and there's no restrictions on who can attend. It's open to absolutely everybody, but you do need to register, same as you did for this. So we can, Amani, would you be able to post the links quickly? Yeah, so there's those things happening next week. Following that, all of the work will be loaded onto the Making Marks website, which we are currently building, which is very exciting. And there will also be the Connect Me residency, which is part of the digital, the other digital aspect of Making Marks. So yeah, so I just want to thank so much all the artists that shared their work and spoke so openly today. And thank you so much to Heather and everyone at the British Council, Caltha, Haida, who recorded 2 films of the Making Marks projects, who were with us for the whole residency. So do check them out. They're also on our Instagram. Dima, as we said, thank you so much. I don't know whether Dalal's in here, but thank you to her as well. And just thank you to everybody who was part of this project, because it's really been an amazing experience for everybody. But yeah, thank you very much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But yeah.